think it was a ghost or a home invasion. I live with my husband, my father-in-law, and my 3 dogs. English is not my first language, so bear with me, please. I was home alone with the dogs. One is my service dog, a gigantically oversized German shepherd, scared of nothing. So he stays with me most of the day in my bedroom, whereas the 2 girls, both big but medium-sized German shepherds and a golden retriever, they have their own room. Both rooms have doggy doors leading to the outside. Around midday, I hear the front doors open. Our house is extremely old, and it hasn't been updated since building. So the front door is incredibly loud. It creaks and it slams. It also has a metal door in front of that, which squeaks and slams with a vibration-like noise. Basically, it's a very loud and specific noise. My dog, who is sleeping, laying on his back in a deep, deep sleep. He shoots awake and he rolls over. His ears standing fully up and looking at me with the most terrified look I'd ever seen on his face. His eyes looked like they were bulging out of his head. As the footsteps started around the house, he was tilting his head, trying to figure out the noise, and kind of almost whimpered. It was like he was scared and confused. The noises got further from my room and closer to the back door, so my boy ran out. A few seconds later, after the door opened and the footsteps started, the girls ran out of their room into the yard, which is what they do when someone comes home. Once everyone was outside together, after about 4 minutes of footsteps, the 3 dogs all went to look at the back door, but all eventually went back inside, since no one was there to greet them. The footsteps continued around the house for another 15 or so minutes, till they randomly stopped. No door opening or closing to let someone out. When this was all happening, I did not think it was paranormal at all. I thought it was my father-in-law, and that my dog was just being dramatic. I sort of giggled at his facial expression. My husband came home an hour later, which is when he pointed out that there was a big puddle of pee, albeit a decent amount had soaked into the wood by now. It's where my boy was laying on the floor. My dog is not old. He hasn't peed himself since he was 5 months old. And as a service dog, he has to be strictly potty trained and has access to the outside through his doggy door at all times. He had peed himself out of fear. I told him what happened since it explained the pee puddle. He called his father. His father had not been home. He was in fact hours away. We frantically searched the house, thinking that somebody had broken in, but nothing was gone or even moved at all. My father-in-law and husband both think it was my deceased mother-in-law. They had died in the house 16 years prior. My husband and I had an extremely bad fight the whole day before, so they think it's somewhat correlated. Although I definitely believe in the supernatural, I'm also a scientist and trying to think of anything else that it could be. But it doesn't make sense, and I'm very scared to be home alone. Weird things have been going around in my apartment, and I have some questions. For context, my great-grandparents, grandparents, and my father, and soon to even be my mother, lived in this apartment before they had me, so it's pretty old. Who knows what kind of energies are here? Nothing really happened when I was little, but when I was 10, I was hearing things fall in the kitchen, such as a cup holder and things that you keep on the table. more violently. It rolled to the other side of the hallway. And how? My carpet is rather thick in the hallway and started around the area it fell on. Wouldn't it stop it just from rolling? Well, I heard footsteps by my bed in the middle of the night. My merch fell from its spot twice. It had been in that spot the whole time since I got it. Why would it fall? I never mentioned it, and it was stable. So I heard something breathing in my right ear one morning. I was by my bed and it woke me up. Nothing there, which kind of made me freeze. And I got two more things that happened that are more creepy for me other than these that happened back to back. About a week ago, I got a 9-day break from school. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up. After school, naps always make you wake up at the most random times, and I didn't mind much. I turned on the lamp and spent my time eating chips, watching YouTube, and staying on my phone all the way up until 3 a.m. It got to be 3:25 a.m., and I was just laying in my bed with my chin on the pillow, phone in my hand. Well, I was the only one awake at the moment. Remember that. The kitchen is next to my bedroom. I think everybody knows the annoying sound of forks clattering against the plate when you let it down to talk or just chew. I began hearing that. I didn't mind too much, and I assumed it was my mother because, well, a few minutes prior she went and used the bathroom, so I shrugged it off. Although after a few seconds, it happened again. And then again. My blood ran cold when I looked back and I noticed that it was pitch black in the kitchen, and the sound was heard every 5 seconds. That meant that there was no one there. I checked and the noise stopped. There was nobody, and I got chills and went back to my room. After I settled in my bed, the noise started again, and the same thing happened 2 more times. I realized whatever it was playing with me and annoying me. The same kind of annoying feeling you have when a drop of water keeps falling from the faucet that just won't stop. So I sat in the kitchen for about half an hour. Then I went to my room and it stopped. I don't know what that was, but I was the only one awake, and I think it knew that it was just toying with me. Why try to make me go there? And now, yesterday at 9:30, I'm in my room once more. And I was just sitting with my chin on my pillow again with my phone, until I heard the chair in the kitchen rattling, and my cat running toward me scared. I was curious, and I froze as I thought of a reasonable motive as to why that happened, and the whole time I was staring into the hallway that was dimly lit. I swear I saw the height of at least a 6-year-old child run past my room and into the kitchen. I couldn't pull my eyes away. I'm sure of what I saw. It was solid, just a shadow, but I just saw legs, arms, and you name it. Now I'm just wondering, is it attached to me? And if yes, why? What are the motives? What does it want? Is it a playful or a harmless spirit? Is it a spirit or something else? How do I make it stop? Please help. Negative spirits in my household. We need solutions. In July of 2024, I began noticing strange electrical sort of phenomena around my house. The color temperature of LED fixtures began to change. Lights would suddenly turn on, despite the fact that no one was actually, flipping the switch. Then came the bodily sensations. Initially, some ghostly thing touched my body. Then it graduated into a not unpleasant sexual encounter. Having not been previously acquainted with the paranormal or supernatural, I wasn't particularly worried. I was primarily interested that something like this was even possible, and I began to sensation of needle pricks. It prevents me from sleeping with piercing tinnitus. It walks around on the bed to further irritate me. I have gone days without sleeping, and this thing is driving me insane, no matter what I try to do to combat it. Most of the hippie stuff doesn't work, although I completely believe this is solvable. I've tried smudging in incense, and, well, that makes it worse. Meditation is no longer possible. I contact a remote spiritual healer to remove the supposed entity attachment, and so far it has not improved whatsoever. I believe this to be a spiritual phenomenon, as I used to use substances and, well, I've suffered profoundly from depression. In every regard, I'm psychologically healthy, and I no longer suffer depression, which was a significant issue in the past. And I'm currently engaged in therapy, which has been extremely productive. So I'm not looking for any psychological advice. But I am looking for actionable advice, as well as a grounded explanation of what is happening to me. Is it real and seems to have a basis in the material world and is not purely resultant from my own cognitive psychological abilities? I'm looking for any advice which might give me an understanding of what has gone wrong and what I can do to prevent this thing from affecting me and my household further. Man, somebody help this poor person. Weird camping experience. Any insights? I was out camping in Canada with a friend, a boreal forest region, if that's any use. And this is something which I'd done many times before with no issues. We ran out for a weekend and had already stayed one night. We were preparing for the next night. I went off to get some firewood. I was out there for a fair bit of time, since it didn't want to run through the night, and my friend was watching the food that we were cooking. I'm not really sure how I got myself turned around, but I managed to get lost even with my flashlight. And like an idiot, I had forgotten my whistle in my other jacket pocket. For anybody who goes camping like this, don't repeat what I did, and just assume the camp isn't so far away, because I did. And I ended up much further away before I had the sense to shout. I didn't want to look like an idiot who'd gotten lost 10 feet from camp, so I just kept on. And by the way, that's how you die of hypothermia. As I'm trying to find my way, I could hear noises. I've been in the bush many times, and I'm familiar with animal sounds. But this was like an odd wail, or like a grieving sound that lasted a little bit. Not like that of a wolf howl, but something that made me feel dread right away. It was really unnerving. But at the time, I figured it was maybe a distant road sound carried through the trees, or maybe just the wind howling. It didn't sound like a cougar or anything I was familiar with. This is the point where I decided to start shouting, and listening for my friend to call back. I did have a flashlight with me, but if you've ever been in the forest with snow coming down, it can still be very difficult to see, which is why it's so hard to trust my own judgment at this point. The sounds continued again, and I saw something perched onto a rock. It looked like a canine, in a way, I guess, but its body was just too large. It didn't look like any wolf or coyote I'd seen. It had 4 especially since I was already primed for being scared when I got lost. But I just have this conviction that it wasn't that. It felt like I wasn't on Earth when I looked at it. Out of body, maybe. I am confident enough to say that it wasn't natural. Has anyone else seen a creature like this, or understands my description? Just a big, unnatural, fox-like thing that pulled my emotions out and terrified me. I feel like I'm insane. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm 100% sure that I've been hexed. This is gonna make me sound schizophrenic, but bear with me here. I had a really bizarre dream last night. I was in a relationship with a white Muslim woman decades older than me. They wore a blue hijab. She was not at all the type of person I'd be attracted to in real life, but in the dream I thought she was beautiful. We attended this lecture on Rosicrucianism. That was together, and, well, Justin Bieber sat down next to me. He was kind of obviously on something, and he was hitting on me. It was pissing me off. I found the secret room in the building, and there were 3 different doors marked with the symbols of the different Abrahamic religions. I opened the door with the Star of David on it, and I found myself in a bedroom. My dad was in there, except he wasn't my dad. He was this weird, overly cheery stock photo caricature of my dad. He was trying to act normal, but he was packing a suitcase while he was talking to me. I visited a gift shop in the building with one of my friends, and there was this old guy at the counter. He was trying to sell me this crystal necklace. The crystal was black, and it looked like it had specks of blood inside it. I told my friend about this dream yesterday. She said she believed that I'd been hexed. She said that if somebody tries to force something on you or sell it to you in a dream, that's a sign you've been hexed. She also said that if something tried, or rather someone tried to feed you something, especially if it's a dessert, you have been hexed. I used to have a friend who dabbled in black magic. He had a couple of screws loose, and, well, he told me that if I ever betrayed him, he would either curse me or kill me. My ex also considered himself sort of a Satanist for a while. He was also trying to convince me to let him give me a vial of his blood, and he would beg me to give him my personal belongings, such as my clothes. Oh boy. There were a couple of strange happenings in a row at work right before I got laid off. One day I noticed that the woman at the register in front of me was staring at me. I tried to ignore it, and later my manager asked me to go over and help said woman's bag groceries, so I did. She said, "I'm sorry, I was staring at you earlier, and this is going to sound really weird, but you sound exactly like my friend who passed away." I was like, "Damn, that's crazy, I'm sorry. What was she like?" And she said, "Oh, actually, it was a guy. You just remind me of him so much for some reason." I only mention this because it's relevant to the story, but I am a detransitioner. I was on hormones for a while when I was younger, and as a result, my voice is deeper than most women's, but not crazy deep. At work, I speak in a fake, high-pitched customer service voice. I never told anybody there about my backstory. It felt like she could see right through me. The same day that incident happened, I went to go get a drink from the water fountain. That's when I noticed that there was this guy standing at the end of the aisle staring at me. Put his hand up to his face, and I swear I saw him lick it slowly, without even breaking eye contact. Very Frank from Blue Velvet-esque. This is all making me feel insane, and maybe I am insane, but I am convinced I'm being subjected to some sort of spiritual attack. solitary man haunting me and my townhouse. A lot of people wanted random updates as time went on. I didn't think I'd have one so soon, but since my last post, some stuff has happened that's definitely left me a little baffled or, well, confused. For starters, last night we couldn't sleep. So just for a bit of giggle, I bedazzled a couple of my Hello Kitty coasters and put them on his table. What better combo than a cigarette and a cold beer? And of course, everybody needs a Hello Kitty coaster for their cold beer. So I made him two, put them on his table. If he didn't like them, it would be no problem. I'd just remove them. I walked back upstairs and I sat in my gaming chair. Maybe 2 hours passed by before anything happened. I always keep my bedroom door closed. That's because I like it that way. I heard 2 knocks and they're pretty loud, but not aggressive sounding. Just firm, I guess. But it definitely scared the hell out of me enough that I jumped. I sort of stared at the door for a while. That was before getting up and opening it. Nothing was there, obviously. All the lights were still off, and I got a little bit worried that he didn't think my joke was funny, so I immediately went downstairs to take the coasters back. They were both side to side by his ashtray. One on the left of it and one on the right. I take that as a sign that maybe he did like them because I had simply just put them together in front of his ashtray. But the thing that's genuinely confusing me is that I don't know where to go from here. I'm a big Call of Duty fan and always have been since I was a little girl. So, I grew up with a rough older brother and that'll kind of do that. So I own a set of dog tags that belong to the character Keegan Russ. I wear the dog tags 24/7, never take them off. Just a habit I have. I woke up this morning to my tags missing. I immediately thought that they finally broke, so I searched my bed only to find nothing. I scoured my room trying to find these dog tags for at least an hour before I finally gave up and just added them back into my cart to buy again. I continued with my morning and did random things before I went downstairs. And lo and behold, there, smack dab right in the middle of the table in the ashtray. I stood there because I didn't know if maybe that was his way of taking them, or if for any reason he thought maybe they were his somehow. I left them in the ashtray because I'm not sure if this was just a funny little retaliation to my joke, or maybe there's some sort of attachment there with them. If he wants them, he can have them. No problem at all. I guess I'm just extremely curious as to what to do now about it. Any input would be wonderful because I'm super curious about what the situation could be on this. Something has been attached to my father and I for 10 years. Hi there. I'm a 21-year-old male from the Southwest. Lived alone with my dad for, going on 15 years now. For some context, my dad is not a superstitious person, nor does he believe in the paranormal. My dad served in Desert Storm, and the liberation of Kuwait. When he came back and started a family, he kept a box of stuff he found and took from those countries during his tours. One of these things is an old gas mask that was taken from a POW, along with a ton of random memorabilia and knickknacks, most of which are in Arabic or are extremely weathered. Ever since I was a kid, my dad's room gave me the creeps. My hair would stand up on the back of my neck, and I always felt the urge to run when I had my back turned to his door. After our first out of 4 moves, it got worse. When I was around 12, we changed apartments. I started to notice that cupboards were being left open and things would bump around in his room, especially in his closet. This was basically all the time when he wasn't home. And eventually, before he moved out of those apartments, I saw his bedroom door open by itself when I was home alone. Once we moved out of that place, into a condo, everything just stopped. the unpacking phase, my dad ended up moving that box into the guest bedroom. I noticed almost overnight that this room felt normal for once. I felt totally fine in there, but the guest bedroom made me feel sick to be inside of it. After we got settled in, a few incidents occurred in which neither me nor my girlfriend can explain. The first being noises from downstairs. While we were upstairs, usually a low tone sound, kind of like throat singing or maybe a dragging sound. Then we would hear steps almost behind or maybe even above her going up and down the stairs. And along with this, there was a constant temperature change throughout the house. But worst of all was this time with my bedroom door. For context, I usually like to goof around with my girlfriend by holding doors closed when we'd chase each other around the house. Except this time I closed my door on her and ran to the other room. But she, for whatever reason, couldn't open the door. She said the knob turned and the door almost had resistance from the other side. She was freaked out beyond belief, and I didn't really know what to make of it. And then we fast forward to now, and we're on the fourth move. Both me and my girlfriend have started seeing apparitions or shadows appearing in plain view in or around the guest bedroom where, get this, the box is. The other night I got up to piss and walked up the hallway. I saw 3 to 4 foot tall shadows peeking out of the doorframe of the guest bedroom at a perfect 45-degree angle. Within a couple of seconds, I literally watched the fucking thing slowly move back into the room. I was freaked out, so I was pissed. I tried to get back to my room as fast as possible. I looked at the room on my way back to my own. I noticed in place of the 3 to 4 foot thing was now around 6 feet tall, with half of its body emerging from the doorway. According to my girlfriend, later that night around 2, she went to the bathroom to grab some tissues. She said that she saw the lights on this room and the door half open, which was odd to say the least because nobody goes in there. And tonight we both witnessed my bathroom lights turn on by themselves. Started to get this feeling like I'm unwelcome in my own home. Does anybody know what I should do? I fear it'll keep getting worse, and I'm not gonna lie. Seeing shadowy figures when I'm walking through the hallways at night makes me feel kinda icky. Just involuntarily astral projected again. WTF. I tried to train myself to astral project. That was when I was 12, and as a result, I ended up getting really good at lucid dreaming. I can also astral project, but I can never control when it happens. Usually, I have limited control over my quote-unquote movements when it does happen. It feels a lot different than a lucid dream, though. It's hard to explain, but when this happens, I can feel myself rise out of my body. Sometimes I immediately get transported to somewhere else. Sometimes I don't. Can't control this either. Before I was even close to falling asleep for the nap I just tried to take, I just rose out of my body. I got transported to a road that ran through some wilderness, someplace where it was nighttime. And by the way, it's the afternoon where I'm at. So I was flying fast down and above the road, but it felt like somebody else was pulling me. Since I knew what was happening, I said out loud, "I know I'm astral projecting again. Can I please be in control this time?" And I was gently placed back into the ground, on my feet. I began to just walk to try to explore, because for once I wasn't terrified about what was happening. I was actually interested in exploring my surroundings. Then, quite rudely, I was transported right back to my body again. It was like I was laying down where it was, but I wasn't in my body, if that makes sense. You would think this next part was sleep paralysis. But no, I get that too. The feeling's remarkably different. I looked over to the side of my head, and a white, bald guy in blue scrubs was standing over my bed and watching me. yelled, "What the fuck?" Then I just sat up. And this is the difference with sleep paralysis. You can't move at all. But with astral projection, you can move your spirit. He seemed kind of shocked that I saw him, like he just got caught. He backed up toward my bedroom door. So I shouted at him again, "Who are you? Get out, leave. You're not welcome here." As you do if a ghost is bothering you. He made the arm motions that said, "Okay, okay, okay." You know, similar to the "I surrender" gesture. He bowed and walked out of the door. And as he bowed, the space where the top half of his body moved from, it was black like a shadow. Then I just rose out of my body by my choice this time and floated around the room and saw my body still in my bed. Started getting that panicky feeling I usually do when I astral project, that I'll die if I don't return to my body immediately. So I floated right back to it. I got back in, and a few seconds later, I was able to quote-unquote wake up again. This whole ordeal took maybe half an hour. I was a little more in control this time than I normally am. And this is the first time I had absolutely no trouble getting back into my body once I tried to. But who or what was that guy in the blue scrubs? Mind you, that's no sleep paralysis demon. He looked normal. And he was kind of pathetic, not scary at all. Plus, I don't get paralysis demons when I get sleep paralysis anyways. Night in the Appalachians. So my girlfriend and her friends invited me to stay at a small cabin near bed and breakfast. It's in the Appalachian Mountains near Seven Devils. The idea was to just go up there to enjoy some snow tubing, and then maybe some light drinking, hot tub, and board games in the cabin afterwards. So the cabin was pretty high up in the mountain, and the drive up to it was kind of scary. Single car length road for the most part, and then railings on the side of the road, so if you were on the side of the truck, which we'd rented a 4WD to make the drive up, thank goodness. 4-wheel drive. It was a sheer drop on that side. Sure, if we drove off the road, we'd likely be stopped by some trees on the way down. But still a bit nerve-wracking. Another thing was some of the trees on the trail had faces on them for decoration. I think they were supposed to look cute, but they just looked kind of unnerving for most of us. Really should have taken pictures, but was too anxious during the climb. The cabin itself was almost at the top of the mountain and fairly small. A small living room with a very tiny and narrow kitchen and 2 bedrooms. Hot tub on the lower porch because the cabin itself was basically in the 2nd floor, so you had to go up the stairway to get into it. Key to the cabin was a lockbox, so no special door lock option, just an old-fashioned cabin. We came back in after snow tubing, and then after dinner, and others drank enough to get buzzed, whilst I only had a glass of wine, since I have a condition that makes it dangerous to get too much alcohol in my system, so relatively sober. I enjoyed the hot tub as planned, witnessed a beautiful shooting star, then played board games after that until maybe 1 a.m. That's when we all went to bed. I woke up a little bit after 4 a.m. because I was suddenly sweating. Then I felt kind of unsettled. I decided I need to go to the bathroom, so I got up, left the bedroom, and nothing seemed to miss. So I used the bathroom. When I left the bathroom, the front door was wide open. Naturally, I felt immediately uneasy. But again, this was a small cabin, so there was nowhere for any intruder to hide. I could easily see the entire interior of the cabin from the tiny hallway. I decided maybe the last person through the door last night after the hot tub didn't fully close the door and lock it. At least appropriately. That's because there is a sign by the door that says, "Close door firmly." And it was I hear the door rattle a little bit and I turn around and stare at it. I watch the lock itself turn. Then the door opens and it doesn't slam open from the wind. It just slowly swung open. I stayed extremely still because, of course, well, that was crazy. The door has a huge clear window on it with no curtains. And a big window beside it, too. That also doesn't have curtains, and there's absolutely no one on the other side of it. There's no way someone could have ducked out of view, either hurried away from the door after pushing it open either. That's because they would have had to make a lot of noise hurrying down the steps to get off the walkway. Like I said, it was an old-fashioned door as well, with a simple lock and knob, no electronic buttons or anything to unlock or lock the buttons or even remotely do it. So after getting the nerves to close the door again and locking it firmly, nothing else happened that night. Couldn't really go back to sleep though, because I was just too scared to do so. The following morning I told the others about it and they were pretty spooked too. But otherwise glad that we were only staying that one night. Before we packed up the truck to leave, there was this strange knocking noise coming from the surrounding woods. Not like somebody knocking on a wall or knocking on a door. It was like a deep, hollow-sounding knock. It only knocked twice, stopped for a while, then it would do it again. Maybe it was just trees knocking together, but after what happened early in the morning like that, it was a little unsettling. And so yeah, I'm from Florida, and though I've experienced other paranormal activity before, that was the most physical thing I've experienced. And I've definitely heard plenty of stories about odd occurrences in the Appalachians. In a way, I'm glad I experienced something. But I'll never forget the fear I felt. After all, my first thought was an intruder or something, and it would have been pretty bad being up there so high by ourselves. If we'd had any reason to run, we could have easily fallen off a cliff or something in the pitch-black darkness outside. It reminds me of a place in the Appalachians I'd been where all of the trees were upside down. That was a weird one. It was made of static and void. For the longest time, since the age of about 6 years old, I've experienced sleep paralysis. Before it started happening, I experienced a really terrible dream of a tall, humanoid-shaped monster that was fully black. Not a shadow figure, not a person shrouded in darkness. This thing was made of void. Basically, in a dream I heard a loud roar. It was outside my 2-story bedroom window. I looked outside and I saw this thing standing underneath a corner street lamp. No visible features beside it being tall, like maybe 8 foot. It was a humanoid in frame, and the roaring noise was coming straight from it. I would then run downstairs and my family would surround me like they were trying to guard me from this thing. But each time I turned around, a family member would vanish, and then once they were all gone, everything would go black. This roaring got louder and then I'd wake up. I would only experience this dream once, but it got followed first by brief bouts of what I feel is astral projection, or perhaps out-of-body experience, which only occurred in my grandma's house for some reason. I would wake up and see myself in bed and then feel this sort of pulling sensation. It would lead me to the front door. I would stare at them and feel the sensation that something was on the other side of the door and wanted me to come outside. Nothing spoke and there was no noise, but I felt this draining and foreboding sensation when I stood looking at the door. I would wake up extra tired the following day. This was a reoccurring experience, and it was only at my grandmother's house, which I fully believe was haunted, and I can explain that later. The sleep paralysis was far more random. Like once a year at first, I wouldn't see anything. I would just experience the horrible panic of being unable to move. My heart would be racing, my chest feeling heavy. but there was a fuzzy, crackling noise coming from it. It was like static. And again, it looked as if my hand would disappear if I were to try and reach out and touch it. Each time I would have sleep paralysis, it would be closer to me. Like it was just inching closer each time I had an episode. The last and final time I saw it, I was 21. And it had actually been a couple of years since I experienced sleep paralysis. So I had brushed it off for the longest time. But one night I woke up feeling extremely hot, and the void figure was just standing directly next to my bed looking down at me with this bright burning red eye. The room itself was also a hazy, deep red, as if I was in a photography darkroom. The static noise was pretty loud. It sounded like this thing was speaking. I couldn't make out any actual words. His voice was deep and kind of had a vibration to it. Oddly enough, I didn't feel fear as I stared up at it. I just stared at it for what felt like maybe a minute, then closed my eyes and went back to sleep, as if I just couldn't be bothered with it. I didn't even remember it until midday the following day, and that's when I was scared. But nothing further happened after that. At least for a while. No sleep paralysis, no void figure in dreams, nothing. It just stopped. It wasn't until I was about 30 that something happened that shook me up pretty badly. I was married at the time, and my husband worked overnight, so I'd be at home by myself and sleeping. I need some kind of white noise in order to sleep, and that usually comes in the form of a fan being on. I woke up because the fan turned off, and it wasn't uncommon for the power to go out randomly in our area, at least for an hour or so in the middle of the night. So I merely sat up in bed for a moment out of confusion. For a split second, I thought I heard what sounded like a quiet growl from underneath my bed. By the way, I don't have any pets at the time. I brushed it off because it was so quiet, and I figured I must still be out of it from sleeping. But I got up with the intention to go to the kitchen to see if the oven light was blinking. That's because that usually indicated the power simply went out. The second I opened the bedroom door, there was that deafening roar from the nightmare when I was 6. Everything in the house turned red. My only thought was to run out the front door. But when I did, I ran right out of my bedroom again like I was caught in some kind of a loop. I couldn't leave the house. The roar was getting louder, and it was just making me start to panic, like, let me out, go away, wake up. I keep repeating when I finally stopped by the front door and just held the doorknob. I could feel sharp claws dragging down the back of my neck, and then I woke up. I was drenched in cold sweat, and I was stuck in bed for a while because I was afraid to move. But eventually, I got the courage to get up and turn on every light in the house. Definitely the most vivid nightmare I've ever had. I'm almost 34 now. Got out of a toxic and unfaithful marriage and currently doing a lot better on my own. There were a lot of negative people in my life before, and since having them cut out of my life, and, well, maybe that plays a part in this. That's because I haven't had anything like that really happen since. Then again, I've had years of dry spells before. I don't get nightmares quite like that anymore, none involving the void being at least. Who knows, maybe my cats play a role since they sleep right next to me every night, and in a way I feel like they ward off bad things. I fully believe I had been haunted by something that preyed on me when I was the most vulnerable in my life. I just hope I never experience it again. Had a baby recently and creepy dreams. I had my baby in November, and I've had a few odd dreams. So I've had the normal encounters with my baby. Baby can see deceased relatives. I had a dream with my dad, who's deceased, walking through the kitchen. See in 2012, and occasionally I'll see him in my dreams. The bad, creepy dreams, well, I've had 2 dreams so far, something I can't see trying to grab or take my baby. In one dream, a ghost distracts me in my bathroom. Then I think, my baby, and I walk out and there's 3 versions of my daughter. Literally 3 of her. I pick them all up and keep them close to me. These dreams have happened in the past month. My baby has night terrors sometimes, and I know it's quote-unquote normal, but I've always had very trippy dreams, even an out-of-body experience before. And so I wonder if my baby inherited that. My mom said that I have fortune teller dreams. English is not her first language. My mom warned me to not go to a cemetery. She said something will follow me out. I've never been to one. My daughter, I observe her when she sleeps in my arms, and her eyes will roll up in her head quickly and she'll begin to squeal like she's really scared. I kiss her and I say, I'm here, the ghost can't catch you, don't worry. Then she goes back to sleep. Also, my mother-in-law had a night terror where she said she saw me walk through her bedroom and out the door. She said that she's never had sleep paralysis before or a dream like that one. She's in her 50s. At my mother's house, she said she saw a clear figure walk really fast into the living room and walk really fast back into the hallway. I wanted to mention also, my baby has a unique birthmark on her arm, and my mom says that it's somebody who wants to be close to me. My mom is an East Asian, and her country has old shamanic spiritual beliefs. So should I be concerned about the weird dreams? Anything I can do to deter something that isn't my dad or deceased relative? Haunting of the Lewis River and nearby forest. I slept next to the lower Lewis Falls many years ago, and I heard the strangest things. I don't believe in the supernatural occurrences necessarily, but this was a striking auditory hallucination I had experienced at night, and it would not be the last time that I would hear it, which has me questioning my doubt of the paranormal. While laying in the hammock near the base of the falls, I could hear the sounds of the waterfall echoing off of many of the nearby surfaces. Thousands of varying surfaces reflected the already thunderous clamor of the falls and began to undulate into a strange pattern. The changes were so subtle and sounded so real, yet within my mind. The clamor of the water and its reflected sounds evolved slowly into the chirping of frogs, which in time became the beating of a drum, then a chant that picked up tempo and became more of a wail and scream. The experience was startling, and I was having a hard time believing what I had experienced. It seemed as though I had simply hallucinated the experience, so I choked it up to a trick of the mind and slept it off. In the morning, I mentioned to my camping buddy that I had hallucinated, and he gave me a very peculiar look and said he heard very much the same thing. This really threw me for a loop. I would go on to mention this experience to other people, and a few folks verified that the Lewis River and the forest on the other side were haunted. I went back and I camped again. I was with the same guy. Actually, and an additional friend, so a year or so later, farther downstream. Heard the same thing again, but I don't think either of them heard it. Anyone ever hear anything like this or know much about the Lewis River being haunted? It's in Gifford-Pinchot National Forest in Washington. Sounds like it could be a, what do they call those? Oh boy, what is it? Oh, a fisher. It's an animal called a fisher, perhaps. Or it could be something more spooky. Ghost Boy Saves My Life. Freshman PE, swimming unit. I'm hanging out in the pool with my friend and some of the rest of my classmates, and I decided I want to see how long I could hold my breath. So I plunged underwater and proceeded to push all the air out of my lungs and just sit there in the bottom of the pool. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. That's when all of a sudden I hear the voice of a young boy say out loud and clear, "Please breathe." I leap out of the water and I look around thinking it was one of my classmates, but no one was even near me. I told my friend about the experience, and he was just as tripped out as I was. Although it was weird, I just put it off and I proceeded with my day. A week later, I'm waiting to get picked up after school in a different spot than I usually did. This spot was at the bottom of the hill, right next to the gym and pool. My mom had been running late, so I was just wandering around to kill time. That's when I noticed a memorial rock. Thought it was strange that there's a memorial rock in such a random place by the gym. I'd assumed it was for a student. I looked closer and read the name Zerky Rainey. Thinking it was interesting and kind of sad, I took a picture of it, sent it to my friend. Seen one from the pool. He texted me back almost immediately with a chilling message. "Look at the death date." I looked down and I read it. My heart stopped and I went cold and my body went completely numb. The death date said September 12th. The exact same day I'd had the experience in the pool where a young boy had told me to breathe. Naturally, when I got home, I pulled out my computer and looked up Zerky Rainey. Turns out he was a 4-year-old boy who was run over by a truck right there where the plaque stood. I always felt like that day I had scared the boy into thinking I would die, just like he did. Obviously, I was nowhere near drowning, but a 4-year-old wouldn't know that. The voice was so clearly a young boy, and I'll never be able to understand or not hear it again. His father actually wrote a book called Letters to Zerky, which I read. It's a beautifully sad novel. I'll never shake the feeling that that little boy saved my life. The crooked man in the woods wants me to join him. Growing up, I spent a lot of time living with my grandma at her place. Now, for context, my grandma did not live in a house. She lived in a cabin in the middle of the woods, completely off-grid on a multi-acre property. No power, no water, nothing. There was a generator that we would use for about an hour a day to use basic amenities and whatnot. But for the most part, it was dark and cold. Living off-grid also means that there's no bathrooms, only outhouses. So, that being said, anytime you needed to use the restroom, you had to walk a pretty long distance from the cabin to the outhouse. Maybe about a football's field in length or so. During the daytime, it's not a problem at all. You can see it's not really as intense. However, at night is a different story. One night while I'm staying with her, I had woken up desperately needing to pee. Usually, if I needed to go in the middle of the night, she wanted me to wake her up so she could walk me. But I was feeling independent, or as independent as 10-year-old me can feel. Quietly, got out of bed, made my way to the door, grabbing a flashlight as I went. I started walking through the dense woods to the outhouse. That's when I heard a branch snap in the distance. Now, at this point, I was already deeply regretting not waking my grandma up to walk with me. But hearing an animal or something walk not 40 feet from me scared me, so I just froze. My mind immediately went to thinking it was a mountain lion another aggressive animal. When I pointed my flashlight in the direction of the sound, my heart hit the floor. There, standing less than a rock's throw away, was a person. I was completely frozen in place, not being able to process what I was seeing. It wasn't a normal person. Something was wrong, very wrong. Their face was contorted into a vile grin, teeth bared, neck tilted. They were standing weird, their stance wide but their shoulders hunched, with that tilted neck. It looked unnatural. At this point, I'm not even sure it was breathing. I remember the flashlight in my hand shaking so bad I couldn't tell if the figure was moving closer to me or if it was just a trick of the light. And that's when it started to beckon me. Its contorted body began moving its arm, trying to summon me to it. It was like watching somebody try to beckon their pet. And while it did this, it grinned widened, and it was impossibly wide. Its head seemed to fall even more to the side, almost at a complete inverted angle, like its neck was broken. I was horrified. It was at that moment that the fear seemed to shake the shock from my body, and I broke into a full sprint. In classic horror movie fashion, I tripped and dropped my flashlight. But that didn't stop me. I bounced off the ground and continued to run for my life, blasting through the front door so hard I fell to the ground inside the cabin. My grandma woke to this and came sprinting inside to see what the hell was going on. Breathlessly, with tears streaming down my face, I said nothing and just pointed. There, outside with the flashlights, was perfectly illuminating it, was the crooked man, still beckoning me with its hand. My grandma's reaction to this was honestly the scariest part. She seemed utterly unaffected, proceeded to open the front door, much to my screaming disapproval. She walked down the front porch into the dark, began yelling at the man. "I told you to leave. You're not welcome here," she said. Not moving on this one thing, but scaring my granddaughter as my last straw. "Leave before I make you leave." And with that, she came back into the cabin and locked the door. I stood there in complete shock. "Grandma, why is that man at your house?" The fear was still sort of riddling my body, and her response made my body run cold. "He used to live here, but he died. He can't seem to move on, even though he chose to leave this world." I was floored. "How did he die, Grandma?" I asked. My grandma, the ever-so-honest woman, she says, and she was telling me exactly how. "He hung himself in those trees over there, and that seems to be where he stays." Ouija board in haunted cemetery. For some backstory, this happened in Greenwood Cemetery in Spokane, Washington. The Greenwood Cemetery here is locally famous for being haunted. There's a specific old broken staircase leading into the cemetery called 1,000 Steps. Many people in my city have stories about seeing entities on these steps and feeling odd and depressed while walking up them. My story doesn't take place on the steps, but rather in the actual cemetery. My friends and I did use the 1,000 Steps entrance to enter the cemetery. This happened 3 or 4 years ago, 2021 or 22. A group of friends and I, 2 male and 1 female, we decided we'd go to the Greenwood Cemetery and bring a Ouija board. I'ma be so real, the idea for the Ouija board was 100% mine. I used to play with them semi-often, and this is the only experience I've had that actually frightened me. My friends and I walked around a bit and looked at the headstones. My friend, a female, and I decided we wanted to have a picture taken for anything that could have caused the shadow-looking thing behind me. Male 1 decided to take a picture of the area directly behind us, see if anything would pop up again. Nothing did. In the first photo, the entity photo on the right side of me, you can see the headstone of the second photo slightly sort of beside my legs, although I'm blocking majority of the headstone. After we decided, yeah, no, that's definitely a ghost, we moved closer to the way we came in. There is a large cement circle on the ground, probably 10 or 15 feet in diameter. We all sat there and talked for a bit. I brought out the Ouija board and I asked if anybody wanted to try it with me. Turns out I'm the dumb white person from every horror movie ever. That's because every friend present said no. We were all a bit on edge due to that picture. I decided I'd play it by myself. Dumb idea. I'm a very observant person and down-to-earth person. I usually notice things that are weird before my friends do. But for some reason, while playing with the Ouija board that night, felt like my brain had gone a bit fuzzy. Almost like my defenses were completely lowered as soon as my fingers were on the planchette. I began asking my typical Ouija board questions. Is anyone with me? Am I alone? How old are you? Did you live on Earth as a human? Etc. The spirit only sliding the planchette to yes or the letter U. I didn't catch on, but my friends did. I asked the spirit, is there something you'd like to tell us? The planchette circled the letter U again. I asked, is there something you want? Once again, circled to U. I still at this didn't fully realize what the spirit was saying. I asked, do you mean someone in my group? It circled you. I asked, do you mean you as in myself? I can't remember if my friends let the spirit answer or if they made me say goodbye before we got an answer. They were terrified and, well, rightfully so. I ended the Ouija board, and as soon as my hands were off the planchette, I felt immediately anxious. I felt extremely on edge and actually started processing what the hell happened. We left right after that. Male number 2, who I was the closest to at the time, couldn't stop commenting on how weird it was that I didn't end the game the first time it said you. And, well, how it was completely out of character for me to not have an ounce of anxiety while playing that game. Still don't know if the entity in the picture and the spirit I talked to were the same. And honestly, I don't care to find out. I wish there was more to the story, but alas, I don't think anything's attached to me. I don't have any unusual things happening after this. A ghost story or not? Weirdest thing that ever happened to me. So I grew up in a semi-detached house. I don't know if you guys in the US have this term, but it's where houses are built in pairs as one building. They share a single wall in the center, but they're otherwise totally separate houses. Anyway, when my parents moved in, there was no fence between our house and the adjoining one. That was in the back garden, or rather just a single wire. They hardly ever saw the neighbor to begin with. If he was out in the garden when they went out, he would zip inside. He was something of a recluse, maybe in his early 50s. That was until one night my father had a bonfire in the garden. He noticed this guy in the shadows. He called to the guy who came over and joined him at the fire. The chap's name was Jack. He was a very interesting character. He worked on the railways, and this was the early 80s. Don't recall exactly what, but it was something involving a lot of manual labor. He had built a machine workshop in his garden, all powered by a big coal-fueled steam boiler. I was too young to remember much, but apparently it was quite something to behold. He was a lonely single guy, but soon became a good friend of the family. We could just go over there and hang out, run between the gardens as we pleased, because he enjoyed the company. He was actually a really nice guy. Anyway, roll on a few years, and there's a giant thunderstorm. The next morning, Jack was found on the pavement between his house and ours. He had a heart attack, and it looks like he was trying to get our house for help or get to it. My parents realized after the fact that he'd been banging on the wall for help, but the commotion of the storm. They just had heard the noise, but not really put two and two together that the neighbor was trying to make contact. Shortly after, a new couple moved in. I was over there one evening, maybe 2 or 3 years after that fateful night. I was babysitting their baby. They were upstairs in a cot while I was downstairs watching MTV with the volume pretty low. As I'm sitting there, a tune begins to play. But it's not on the TV, it's to the right of me, and I swear it's the sound of tapping on a small wooden table. It's only a few feet away from me. I look over to the noise, to the table, then sit there almost frozen as the notes play. Their cat is walking past. It stops, looks in the direction of the table too. And this goes on for what feels like a long 15 seconds. I'm sat there almost frozen. The hairs on the back of my neck are standing on end, and I have the feeling of someone walking over my grave. The feeling isn't terror, but let's say I'm on hyper alert. The feeling passes quickly. I regain my composure. Go over to the table, tap my finger on it, and it definitely sounds just the same as the notes I was hearing. But I wasn't able to produce different notes by varying my tap like the noises I heard previously. The sun set, not dark outside. Walked around the house, checked all the doors, which were all locked. Baby was still sound asleep in the cot. No way it could get out and no one else was in the house. I remain in the house until the parents return around midnight. I don't feel nervous, but all these years later, it's still an odd experience. I don't know how to really pigeonhole it. I don't read any more into the feeling of walking up my grave than a biological response to something unexpected and alarming in the moment. A communication from a deceased neighbor beyond the grave? Well, it makes the story a little more interesting, I guess. I don't really read into that either.